Yeah, I work at a shop that's at 658 North Main, and there is a couple out back behind their shop brandishing a knife. Looks like they're trying to stab someone.
Oh, yep, they're here. Yep, I'm watching from out there. Yep, they're all there. Okay.
In this video, you're going to see multiple officers open fire on an autistic teen when they get reports of a subject that has a knife. This is a Shots Fired podcast. I'm Mark Ardlich. This is Kyle Schoberg. And in studio with us, we have Scott Savage, owner of Savage Training Group. Scott, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Scott. So you're very familiar with this case. It sparked a lot of controversy for valid reasons. We want to talk about it. People want to hear our opinion on it. Tell everybody about this case, what the officers responded to, and then we're going to watch the body cam, come back, and we'll break it down.
Yeah, this case happens in Pocatello, Idaho, April 5th, 2025, about 5:22 p.m. Call comes in, not from the residence. This is from a bystander, a neighbor, calling and saying that they see some kind of fight, a disturbance between somebody armed with a knife and another party armed with a stick. At one point, the caller describes that the person may have stabbed himself. At one point, he says there's some kind of fight going on between the family, so it's pretty darn chaotic. Let's take a look at the video.
In the backyard.
You said a red truck and a black Jeep? Is that what you said?
Red truck, red Jeep.
Red Jeep.
And there's a,
I just want to make sure that you look like they're fighting the right people.
oh, yep, they're here.
Okay, I'll let you go then, okay? Just stay in there at the business, all right?
Yep, I'm watching from out there.
Thank you.
Yep, they're all there. Okay, bye.
Okay, we just watched that video. A lot happens in a very, very short amount of time. And the question comes up, should these officers have ever opened fire on this autistic teen? So let's talk about the initial response. Scott, you gave us a rundown of what the call for service is, what these officers are hearing and responding to. Let's talk about the initial response.
Yeah, you know, when we see these kinds of videos, one thing we never seem to get is the initial radio broadcasts or the MDC, mobile data computer, what's on the car computer. In other words, what are the officers actually told? So we got the 911, a little bit of the 911 call. We'll listen to that.
Hi, yeah, I work at a shop that's at 658 North Main, and there is a couple out back behind their shop brandishing a knife. Looks like they're trying to stab someone. There's a man and a woman and then another guy in the street who seems like he's antagonizing him. One guy's got a knife. It looks like he's under the influence, and they're out in the backyard chasing each other around.
Okay. And they're in the backyard of a residence?
Yeah, backyard of the residence.
We see some of the video, but we actually never get what were the officers responding to. For instance, I've been to, and I'm sure you have many times, where what is in the computer is different than what you're told on the radio, which is different than what the 911 caller said. And then when you get to the scene, it's a completely different thing. So
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to say what was in the officer's mind or what they're responding to. I'm going to make an assumption here based on the 911 call that they're responding to some kind of disturbance, fight in progress, or a weapons call.
Yeah, so I'm putting myself in the shoes of, like you said, I'm assuming, but based on the 911 call, what the officers are responding to, me personally would want to know what's our history at that house, who lives there, have we been there before, do they know that someone who does live in that house maybe is diagnosed with autism. I would want to know all the information I possibly could about that particular residence and who lives there if I could. If there is none and they say, we've never responded to this address, then I'm just thinking to myself, I'm responding to a call, a guy armed with a knife, someone armed with a stick, and there's some type of fight going on. That would be considered an assault with a deadly weapon. And that's all you have to go off of.
Well, you have multiple officers arriving on scene really quick. So it leads me to believe that their mindset is this is some type of a weapons call or a stabbing in progress, a fight, and there's a knife involved. That's why you're going to get multiple officers responding. Typical response to calls is generally one or two officers. Here you have multiple show up basically at the same time.
Yeah. And when they do all show up, they all kind of seem to show up at the same time. One or two officers do deploy a less lethal shotgun. You can see that in the video. So they are communicating clearly with each other about someone grab less lethal, all of those things. So I thought that was appropriate. But let's now discuss. They end up running up to that fence. This is where everything goes bad. So you have a lady in the background. She's like tugging on his shirt. He ends up at one point, before the cops get there, swinging the knife at her. You can see the neighbors filming it. When the officers do show up, she ends up backing off of the teenager. So he's left there by himself. He is armed with a large knife. They put themselves right up against the fence line, and then that's when he jumps up, and then shots are fired.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, you're watching the video, we know a lot more now, right? We know this is a 17-year-old kid. We know he's autistic, and we know he was taken off life support and died, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of information now. That's the kind of information when you're responding to these calls you don't have. You have such limited data, right?
Yeah.
So if any three of us get the call of a weapons call, fight in progress, where we believe there's imminent harm, like there's some potential victim who's either been stabbed, is being stabbed, there's some potential for that, we're going to respond into the call, and when you close distance with this person, you limit all the ability for everything else we want to do. So naturally, people now are saying, why don't they bring in a psychologist, a psychological emergency response team? That's all good and well, but that also implies that you kind of know the outcome, right? They should have done this, should have done that. If we get this call and we're like, wait, what are we getting? Because remember, if you're not a police officer and you're hearing this, as a police officer, you're getting a piece of what the 911 call is, which has been filtered from the call taker to the dispatcher to your computer or over the radio. It's not exactly what the 911 caller said, right? So you're just getting a little bit of information. And in this situation, if I get a call, there's two people armed and I think someone's in danger, I'm probably going to respond in pretty quick and try to put myself in between potential victims or hostages and an adversary, right? And the minute you close distance, I know going in, I'm limiting my other tactics to use. I'm limiting perhaps the de-escalation, negotiators, all the other great stuff that can be brought in. But I think it's the right call based on the limited data that we know about this call. I still think that's the right thing. I don't know if you guys see it differently.
Well, you just said the hot topic word, and that's de-escalation. And everybody was upset that they thought the officer should have de-escalated the situation. So you have a great way of describing what de-escalation is and how officers maybe should de-escalate, or what is de-escalation. So let's hit on that real quick, because that's what everybody wants to know.
Yeah. De-escalation is, I think, often described as a panacea. It's like the be-all, end-all. The police should just de-escalate everything. But I think you would agree that de-escalation is a tactic that we choose, and sometimes it works, sometimes it's appropriate. It's not always appropriate, right? Active shooter, imminent peril, a rape in progress, somebody's being hit over the head with a stick. It's not time to step in and be like, sir, would you mind kind of maybe putting down that's not appropriate. So we have to agree that sometimes appropriate, sometimes it's not. But the problem with de-escalation is that everyone has a different opinion of what that is. Mm-hmm. Is de-escalation the absence of force, meaning we actually use no force on anyone? Is de-escalation something where I talk to people, some kind of verbal negotiation, persuasion thing? What is it, right? Nobody even seems to agree on that. In this situation, it is a great question to ask. Why didn't the officers de-escalate? Well, that begs the question, what did the officers think was happening? And with watching this video, we don't know what's in the officer's mind. We don't know what was being said between the officer and the kid that was killed. We don't know what the family was saying, so we need that piece of information. But just taking a step back from de-escalation, I like to think about it, it's not necessarily a verb, something I do to someone. It's more like a noun, something, when appropriate, I can offer to somebody, right? It's almost like when we have containment, control, communication, all those things, then I can offer de-escalation, right? In this situation, if I believe that there is somebody with a knife and there's a victim right next to him, or someone's about to be harmed, I have no control over this adversary. Well, that's one of the things we need for de-escalation to be successful, or to offer that. So if I've got control, communication, containment on this person, perhaps then it would be appropriate to be like, let's offer de-escalation, but it's an offer. De-escalation requires participation, agreement from the other person.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking, hey, the cops should de-escalate, we do have to remember there's another piece of this adversarial contact between another human, which is the suspect, or in this case, the subject, right? Is this person able to understand the offer of de-escalation, agree to drop the bat, participate, meaning I'm going to walk and put my hands up and walk back to the officers and get arrested? So there's a lot of different things that go into it. It's not a magic wand. It's not something where the officers can go, you're just de-escalated right now. That's not how it works. Not saying whether was an opportunity or not in this situation, because I don't know all the information, but I do know de-escalation is always talked about as this really easy thing to do. It's actually very complex.
So, I mean, you could see these officers that they run up, they already have their guns out. That person's on the ground. So I almost believe that their mindset is maybe this person's injured or is actively being stabbed. But then they get up to the fence, they give looks like potentially commands, but that's when the video pauses. So can you talk to us about the fence? Because there's a lot of circulation right now that we've been looking at where people are very upset and they're saying there was a fence between the person with the knife and the officers, and that fence should have prevented that.
Yeah. Time, distance, and shielding is or time, distance, and barriers, it's sometimes called. Whether you call it time, distance, and shielding, time, distance, and barriers, those are just tried and true tactical concepts that we use a lot in the field. Is there some way to exploit time, to give us more time to react to plan? Is there distance? Is it possible to put distance between me and whatever adversary I'm dealing with because it gives me more time to react, or it's going to take longer for him to attack me, right? And then barriers would be like the fence, like a knocked over table in front of somebody where they'd have to traverse that to get to us. In this situation where you've got this fence that was, 4 feet or somewhere around there, a wired fence, that's a great barrier to have between me and somebody that's armed with an edged weapon. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's immaterial if the person's got a gun, but in this situation, that would at least slow down, somebody who's trying to attack me. Now, don't know, again, what the officers heard, don't know what they felt. And for whatever reason, they felt, I'm assuming, that there's an imminent threat, that this person is able to jump the fence, traverse the fence, and they're going to be able to attack me with this edged weapon. I'm assuming they shot him, and that's what they were feeling. Yeah. But in this situation, generally we want those types of things. We want the fence between us and them. If the victim, though, is behind the fence, it slows the officers down just as much as it slows the adversary down. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah, that's where my brain goes is having that fence in between them is the ideal situation with somebody armed with an edged weapon. But in this case, you do have that female who's directly behind him. Now, she does back off quite a bit of a distance away from him, and I would hope that maybe the officers were communicating to her, hey, back completely off, go inside the house, whatever. And if they had him in I guess more of a controlled environment where he's by himself, you have the fence between you, she's removed from the scenario. I think the only thing that could be done different would be, okay, she's separated from him. We're not worried about that anymore. Now maybe we try to offer the de-escalation or try to talk to this guy and back off of that fence, maybe take some cover behind a car that was on the street or use your own patrol cars. And if that individual does take it upon himself to make the movement to jump over that fence, then your hands are tied at that point, and you're going to have to, use the appropriate force at that point in time. But if he's standing there, that might buy you that time to have that conversation with him and use that fence to your advantage. So when you're watching this video, if you're a police officer or even a civilian watching, that's what I would be looking at if I'm in a situation like that, like recognizing when do I need to go now, and then when do I recognize, okay, maybe this potential threat is no longer there. Maybe we need to back off a little bit, use this fence to our advantage, and then try to talk to this person. And if they end up making, like I said, the advert move of jumping the fence and your hands are tied, but just being able to, and that's really hard to do, like processing all of that, all while your adrenaline's going, you are being dispatched to an assault with a deadly weapon call. It's hard to make all those judgments at once.
No, it is. And the other thing to remember is that we as viewers, passive viewers, we weren't there, we got to see the video of how the 17-year-old was ambulating, like how he's moving beforehand. He was unsteady on his feet. He's fallen over. His family's able to just grab his sweatshirt and kind of pull him off balance to pull him down. Like he's not, a physically capable person.
Yeah.
And either looks drunk or high, or he's got, cerebral palsy, or there's something going on there that's affecting the way he moves. We have the benefit of knowing that because we saw it before the officers did.
Yeah, they
right?
didn't see that.
They
Clearly.
didn't see that.
No.
We can look at the video and go, he's never going to be able to jump that and get to you. You can just take a step back and he won't be able to get to you. As long as you're outside of a lunging distance, he can't touch you with that knife. But the officers didn't have that benefit. And the other thing to remember is, had that young boy turned around and stabbed somebody, this would be a completely different criticism of the officers. Then it would be, you guys are lazy.
Didn't act fast enough.
You didn't act. You had all the information you needed.
It's a 3-foot fence.
Yes, a caller called you and told you a man with a knife is in a fight with someone else. He turned around and stabbed him, and you did nothing. That's why do we pay you guys? So, cops are oftentimes judged by the outcome. There's a legal precedent where when we're judging force, the courts are judging force, they can't use something called 20/20 hindsight, meaning you have to put yourself in the shoes of the officers, what they knew at the time, not what you know because you watched the video. Yet we as observers and everyone who's watched this video, we get to use 20/20 hindsight. Those officers didn't have that.
Well, the community is actually really upset about this. They've held protests out there, and the police chief actually came out. And what I do agree with is that he does point out that the video that is out there right now is only giving you one perspective. I don't know if they have body cameras or not, but if they do, I imagine it's going to be released because this case has only happened less than a week ago. So a lot of body cam might not even come out until after they have a chance to redact it. It's interesting. What's your thoughts on the police, the press release?
Yeah, you can watch the police chief's press conference, and it's on YouTube. And he's very stoic, and he says there was an incident. Here's the 911 call. It resulted in an officer-involved shooting. I am aware of the video circulating. I just want to remind you, you're seeing one aspect of this, which is very true. And we're going to let the investigation play out. We're not going to take any questions, and we're going to, investigate this thing. Now, if I were chief, which I've never been a chief, I'd probably take questions, even if you have to answer it. Hey, I'm sorry, we can't give you any of that information right now. But I understand he's in a very tough situation. I know the public wants him to come out and say something and and be like, this is wrong. We're fired all the officers,
It would be inappropriate for him to do that at this point.
Absolutely inappropriate. And any single person in this country who's, suspected of a crime, you have rights. And that includes police officers. And not that they're suspected of a crime, but this is a criminal investigation. You've been involved in an officer-involved shooting. This gentleman has died as a result of that. The district attorney's office has got to figure out, is this murder, manslaughter, or justifiable homicide? This is a criminal investigation. And there is so much more that needs to go into this before the chief comes out and gives an opinion. Because even if he did come out and say, this is wrong, well, that's just an opinion. Like, it's not legally relevant to what's going on here.
Yeah,
right?
There's no evidence right now that would support that. So it's a terrible situation all the way around. Like, it is a sad circumstance. Obviously we wish that nothing like this would happen, but that is the tough job of being in policing and being put in a situation like this where you are talking about somebody that's armed with a deadly weapon and having to kind of process everything that's going on. And then it's just a horrible situation all the way around. So
Agreed.
Well, Scott, thanks for coming in studio to break down this video. You're super knowledgeable, all of that. Can you tell everybody about Savage Training Group?
Yeah, Savage Training Group is a law enforcement training organization, and we travel around the country providing advanced law enforcement training courses. And we dig into challenging, difficult situations like this because there's a lot of times not an easy answer. So we try to give people an accurate knowledge of the laws, modern tactics, human factors, all the stuff that goes into these really incredibly challenging situations. So if you're a police officer and you're looking for some effective training, just would encourage you to go to savagetraininggroup.com and kind of check out what we have to offer. And we'd love to train with you as we try to solve some of these issues.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming in studio. And sad case, I don't have anything else to offer on it. I mean, I wish it didn't happen.
Yeah, I'd like to see some of the other body camera when it comes out and to see what the result of this is.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's wrap this one up. So we'll see you guys on the next video.
Stay safe and be smart.